Welcome viewers, I'm Janiser Ahmed from Millennium TV USA. I welcome you to my show News and Views. Viewers, breaking news is coming in from Germany, where the Munich Security Conference is taking place, where Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence, he has very unequivocally reaffirmed his United States unwavering support to the NATO allies. Viewers, he at the same time he stated that the countries, the NATO partners, they needed to do more so far as paying their fair share on defense was concerned, and in fact, he indicated that a number of countries in that NATO alliance, they were not paying their fair share of defense, and that United States previously, United States had to pay the lion's share of defense, and it was providing security to the defense of the NATO countries. Viewers, Vice President Mike Pence also stated that apart from US, only 4 countries were fulfilling their commitment to pay 2% of their GDP, as was previously agreed during a 2014 agreement, under which increased financial funding had been committed by the NATO member countries. So a large number of countries, falling short of their commitment so far as NATO alliance is concerned. But viewers, as you know, Vice President Mike Pence, he also had kinds of, he had, he also talked about the United States relationship with Russia and how it was viewed, in so far as the NATO countries were concerned. And he stated, quite unequivocally that the United States would hold Russia accountable for its actions, of, given the backdrop of Russian aggression in, for instance, in Ukraine, in Belarus, where the Russian, aggression, it has become a cause of concern for a number of NATO countries. And previously, during the Obama administration, the United States, it reaffirmed its commitment by sending more troops and tanks closer to the border where Russian aggression is taking place, right next to Poland. So that was seen as United States standing behind its allies and reaffirming its commitment. But viewers, the Vice President, he also stated, while he stated that the US would hold Russia accountable for its wrongdoings in Ukraine and in other regions, he also stated that the United States would try to find a new common ground with Russia, indicating that this had been previously expressed by President Trump himself. So quite of a balancing act on part of the Vice President Mike Pence, a true statesman that he is. He knows how to, how to deal such diplomatic platforms where you have to juggle with the situation where on the one hand you have the NATO allies, the traditional allies of United States of America, in fact going back as far back as World War II, where this new alliance emerged. And so commitment to that alliance, it was a long-standing policy of United States foreign policy, and it was cause a bone of contention during the campaign trail, where we saw Hillary Clinton taking issues with the candidate Trump on the issue of NATO alliance, and how the US, it would, according to Hillary Clinton, it would stand committed to the NATO alliance. But we saw that President Trump, he made it very clear that since a number of NATO countries, they were not paying what they should be paying to fulfill their commitment to the NATO defense, so he would no longer, he would try to reconsider the entire relationship, and he would try to pull back some of the security commitments that the United States pledges towards NATO. So that was seen as a kind of it unruffled, quite a few feathers in the transatlantic partnership. But recently, we have seen that what President Trump he says, he follows it up with his with concrete steps, so to speak. And here we had Vice President reaffirming that commitment, but making it very clear that in order for NATO to emerge stronger, those countries who are not paying their share of defense funding, they should step forward and they should pay their dues, and that's the way forward. But viewers, also during the Munich Security Conference, we saw Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who stated that Russia was pursuing a relationship with the U.S. on based on mutual respect, and he also he had to state that because previously the relationship, the U.S.-Russian equation, it is undergoing quite a dramatic change with President Trump saying that although he intends to be tough on Russia and he will see to it that Russia, it is brought into into the line, but he also has expressed the concern that a number of things can improve if relationship between Russia and U.S. grows and at a new level. For instance, he had been talking about the fact that there is no need for animosity, and instead friendship can usher in a new era of stability for what he has been indicating the entire world. And that is where Russia really comes in. For instance, during the last press conference, President Trump stated that for instance, when he was asked a question on the Russian destroyer, it was seen close of the shores of Connecticut, and it was very seen as a kind of posing a threat to the United States, although it was in the international waters. But President Trump stated that it was quite easy for him to go down very hard on Russian steps and these Russian saber rattling, but he would not tell the press what he was going to do so far as Russia was concerned. And then he cited a number of reasons. For instance, he cited the role of media in depicting him and and giving a twist to whatever he has been doing. So he stated that he was going to be he was going to hold his cards and not reveal what cards he was going to play so far as Russia was concerned. And naturally he stated that he would be tough on Russia, but he also indicated that he wants to improve relationship with Russia, because according to him that would be a win-win for all involved in the equation. So viewers, looks like quite a tricky chapter so far as the equation is concerned, but hopefully with the with the Vice President saying in a very diplomatic manner that this relationship would be would be improved, so there is hope for better days to come. Viewers, also the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, she was asked by a reporter as to what she had to say on, for instance, on the growing debate inside the US and the world about the role of media. And she stated very categorically that media and press is the pillar of democracy. And she stated it in her quite in a way that is very typical of the German Chancellor, very diplomatic, very contained and calm, and she chooses her words very carefully. So there, according to her, media, its role, it is it is quite important in this current debate that we are having. Viewers, here a quick break. Do not go anywhere. We'll be just right back. Welcome, viewers. Viewers, news from China is that Beijing is considering to ban all imports of coal coming from North Korea. viewers, this is seen as a step by Beijing in order to pile pressure on Pyongyang in order to discipline its behavior, so to speak, the kind of manner in which the North Korean regime it has been acting in the latest in the previous few months, and it has been anything but quite a display of saber rattling so far as its intentions towards the West are concerned. And even now the fact remains that its alliance with China. China is now considered to be the only ally of North Korea, and North Korea is an increasingly, in fact, it's a completely isolated country. Majority of the world nations, they have they have stepped back from their from forming any kind of bilateral relationship with Pyongyang because of its because of the way that it treats other countries, its neighbors, South Korea, for instance, and its military buildup and the huge amount of finances and funding that it pours into its military program. So, and without any rhyme or reason, it keeps on threatening other nations. It keeps on targeting the sovereignty of other nations. For instance, the U.S. That and for which there is absolutely no technologically speaking, or there seems to be no grounding in what its leaders are doing. But viewers, this move from China, it is a slap in the face of what the North Koreans have been doing. For instance, China traditionally it procures a coal worth $100 million worth of coal each year. But this, after this ban, it is going to cripple the North Korean economy. Previously, the Chinese leaders, they were of the view that this would allow the North Korean regime and the economy to sustain itself, perhaps, and the people would be able to buy for instance food products, and they would be able to kind of survive. The North Korean economy, it was depending on these exports, coal exports to China. For instance, coal is now currently it is the biggest export of North Korea. But after this ban, this is going to be in tremendous danger, viewers. But there is a backdrop to this story, as there is always a backdrop to any story. So what's the backdrop in this case? It's the fact that the Kim Jong Un's half brother, Kim Jong Nam, who was recently assassinated at an airport in Malaysia. He previously he had been living in China's province of Macau, and he had been living there under official Chinese protection, and he was seen as for instance, for the North Korean, he was a Chinese puppet, and for the current regime, he was a kind of a threat to the North Korean regime. And they were thinking that since he happens to be a puppet of Beijing, he could at any time in any emerging scenario, he could come in and take over. And they were seeing him as a kind of a thorn in their side, and they perhaps, the thinking was that they wanted to get rid of him. And that is what perhaps they got the chance, and we saw that he was assassinated recently at an airport in Malaysia. So there is a growing view that China's ban on coal, it comes after his assassination, that China is not happy with the fact, and also it goes on to show that China perhaps considers that his assassination was carried out by the North Korean regime. This is what the thinking in Beijing seems to be, and the ban is resulting afterwards, shortly afterwards, the killing. So viewers, quite a new chapter so far as the Chinese and North Korean equation is concerned, because previously North Korea, whatever it was doing, it was seen as doing under the sphere of influence provided to it by the Chinese leaders, and Beijing always had very cordial ties with North Korea, because isolated from the entire world, its economy, its trade, and whatever it was doing, its diplomacy and its tourism, it was dependent on China, and so it was looking up onto China for whatever its needs were. But now that relationship is under increasing strain by the Chinese leadership, and that seems to be very well placed and very well founded, because given the North Korean saber rattling, it really is a concern for people all over the globe. For instance, recently it tested a ballistic missile, and it engaged in a kind of saber rattling against the West, particularly the U.S., for absolutely no rhyme or reason behind its recent actions. Viewers, also there is a view that why China is now tightening up on its I would not say tightening up the news around Pyongyang, but it's reconsidering its entire relationship with North Korea, is because perhaps to a very large extent it can be attributed to how the U.S. has been what the U.S. has been telling the Chinese to do. For instance, President Trump, during the campaign trail, and even recently, he made it very clear that China is it wields total control over North Korea, and for it to have continued trade relationship with the United States, it better discipline North Korea, and it should do something to put North Koreans under check, and because they are the ones dealing with the North Koreans at the moment right now. So those words, they really had their effect on Beijing, and as a result, we saw that China, it really stepped forward and followed the course. But we was also the President Trump, for instance, previously he stated that the trade itself with China, it could be reconsidered if China was unwilling to discipline North Korea. And trade is something that is a very like a major issue for Beijing, because right now all its economy and its economic success, the gains that it is making in all spheres of life, apparently, they can be attributed to its trade with the entire world, particularly the U.S. And the trade volume itself is mammoth, so to speak. It is so large that it really beggars description. But as has been previously indicated, that trade is imbalanced, and because it tends to favor the Chinese companies and Chinese employers at the cost of the U.S. Companies, and the it leads to job loss inside the U.S. This is what has been previously indicated by President Trump, and there is an element of truth to it, because we like if you step into any store or any big brand store, so to speak, you will find that Chinese products, they have virtually invaded all across. They are everywhere, and at the end of the day, it is the American taxpayer who is spending money on those products, and if that is reconsidered, perhaps if the products are made in America, and the American workers, they tend to benefit from that, it can really bring about a kind of a change. But that relationship, so far as trade is concerned, China depends on it. China views it as something. It is very protective of trade, of how it is doing trade with different countries. So President Trump, he really struck a raw nerve in Beijing when he stated that trade will be considered, and recently the way he linked trade with China's relationship with North Korea, it proved to be extremely effective, because now we have seen China tightening the news around Pyongyang, and hopefully it will lead to a very positive outcome, and it would compel the North Korean regime to check its behavior, and stop right now with its all aggressive military plans. Viewers, a quick break. Do not go anywhere. We'll be just right back. Welcome, viewers. I hope most of you must have seen Jurassic Park, the famous movie, the adventure movie where the entire process of bringing the dinosaurs to life is depicted. The famous actor Richard Attenborough, he is in that movie. He is a scientist, and he tries to extract the blood contained in a mosquito which was stored in an amber, and he takes out the DNA of the dinosaur from the mosquito's gut, and he tries to clone it with the DNA of the frog, and that entire cloning process, it leads to the formation and creation of the dinosaurs. And so that was a cloning process based on scientific research. And so it might, of course, it is not completely true, but further research on it can lead to dividends in science. But that entire process, it really shows the way forward, that science is moving forward. And perhaps as of now, you might not see real dinosaurs being brought back to life by the scientists. At least there is one scientist in the US, in fact a Harvard professor, his name is Mr. George Church, and he is regarded as a kind of a maverick geneticist by the entire scientist community. And recently he has been able to pair the mammoth DNA with the Asian elephants. And according to him and his scientific research, within 2 years, the mammoth, the ancient giant elephants with huge tusks and hairy skin, they would be brought back to life in almost 2 years time span. And viewers, this is a huge discovery, and in fact a huge, not a discovery, but a huge kind of a step forward so far as the cloning and the entire merging of the DNA is concerned. Viewers, he was able to join dozens of mammoth DNAs with the ancient elephants DNA, and he was able to process it, and that will lead to the creation of that ancient mammoth, which went extinct almost 4,000 years ago. Viewers, that is going to be, of course, it is apart from giving the zoos a new exhibit, and it is going to have environmental impact as well. For instance, when it will be released into Arctic, it would try to prevent the ongoing globalization process. For instance, some scientists are of the view that when they would be released in the wild, in the Arctic, they would stop the process of the thawing of ice, and so the thawing would stop for a certain number of years. So viewers, quite an interesting discovery, and in fact a new step forward, and hopefully within 2 years we hope to see the ancient mammoth that went extinct almost 4,000 years ago come back to life. How amazing it would be! It would be like having that Jurassic Park kind of impact, Jurassic Park feeling, almost seeing something spring back to life, which had gone missing 4,000 years ago. Viewers, a huge victory for science, and particularly for cloning. Viewers, also in the US news previously, a very well-renowned media house, it published a news stating that the Department of Homeland Security, it is considering the use of the National Guard to round up millions, hundreds and thousands of illegal immigrants inside the US. And that news went, of course, as happens with all the news, it was read by by mass audience, and it was everywhere. It was in fact all over the place, and it went viral. And there was, we cry. People were, there was a hue and cry, and you name it. So there was a lot of criticism placed on the on this approach. But viewers, that report turned out to be incorrect. The Department of Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly, he issued, the department had to issue a, a new statement saying that these reports were totally false, and the department had no plan to use the National Guard so far as rounding up the illegal immigrants was concerned, and that this report was completely false. So viewers, all given the current debate that we are having, particularly how media is given to making a mountain of a molehill at times, and the fact that White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer earlier stated that media is following what he called shoot first and point later kind of an approach. So again, here was a display of that very approach, and what appears to be the case is that the reporter who filed the report, he or she, they did not double check on their facts. They just relied on somebody in some department somewhere, telling them, giving them the information, and there goes the report, all of a sudden coming out with making its impact and creating fear within the people. So viewers, again, the need for what President Trump has been saying, in fact, that the media, it really a section of the media, not all media, but those reporters who are given to sensationalism, they must need to reassess their role and how they are doing their work. So viewers, also viewers, news is coming in from Pakistan, where in fact a positive news is breaking, that the Pakistani Senate, it has passed a landmark Hindu marriage bill. It would soon be signed by the president, and after that it would become a law. And with all the laws, it would have to be obeyed, and it would have to be followed, and there would be no turning away from that law. So viewers, what that law is, what that bill is, the bill right now, it aims to give protection to the Hindu community inside Pakistan. It with the legislation of the bill, once the bill becomes a law, the Hindu women and men, they would be able to register themselves, and they would be able to register their marriage. So they would be able to, they would have a documentary proof that they are Hindu and they are men and husband and wife. So previously that was not the case, and that was allowing the miscreants to it was leading to abuse of the Hindu community. For instance, previously there were like hundreds and hundreds of reports coming out, and revealing the plight of the Hindu women. What was happening was that Hindu women, they were kidnapped in certain cases. The miscreants, they would pick them up, they would take them somewhere, and they would pressurize them to change their names and appear before before the community or a court of law, and tell them that they were Muslims, they had converted to Islam, and that they were no longer Hindus. And even there were even reports that this was leading many of the Hindu women to emigrate to India. They were moving into India, and they had to even cross the borders, and they had to rush to India just to protect themselves, because their lives were in jeopardy, so to speak. But viewers, with this bill, now they would have the protection that they need to declare themselves openly that they are Hindus, and that they are in a marriage relationship, and that would of course give them renewed security that the state of Pakistan is looking after them. It is not abandoning its minorities. Viewers, also there has been criticism on the bill that although this is quite a welcome move and it should be appreciated, there is one particular clause in the bill which states that if one of the partners they can go to a court of law and they can have the marriage annulled. They can cancel the marriage based on the fact that if based on the fact that one of the partners has changed their religion. Viewers, this can allow the miscreants to still kidnap and take away the women, particularly who are more vulnerable than Hindu men, that they can be kidnapped and they can be forced to appear before a court of law and declare that they do not want to live with a Hindu man, and hence the marriage should be cancelled. It should be, the annulment should be announced. So, viewers, this is one particular clause that human rights bodies they have been talking about, and perhaps it would figure somewhere later in the debate. But right now, what has happened is quite a positive step, and it needs to be appreciated because still it's quite a step forward for the minorities, particularly the Hindu community, which after long last they have been recognized, and their right to live as husband and wife, it has been recognized. Viewers, um, quite a leap for the Hindus in Pakistan. Viewers, also news from Times of India is that the other day I was browsing the internet and I came up across this wonderful article, piece of opinion written by an Indian, urging both the countries to have peaceful relationship. The writer was in fact highlighting the need to give peace a chance so far as Pakistan-India equation is concerned. Viewers, as you know, this hostility, this the animus, the animosity, it dates back to partition and even pre-partition era, where unfortunately both the nations, so to speak, they could not develop an understanding of each other's cultures, and it ultimately led to division, and the division it kept growing and growing till it led to a number of wars between the two countries. But viewers, that columnist, he was all praise for the people-to-people contacts. For instance, he was trying to he talked about a number of Indians who recently went over to Pakistan and what their experiences were, the how they were welcomed, and what was their what were their thoughts after returning from Pakistan. And that writer stated that all those people they were like singing songs of generosity from the Pakistani hosts, and they said that they were extremely happy that they had been given a chance to visit Pakistan, and what really happened with them, that all of their preconceived notions they had been corrected, they had been checked after they personally went over and intermingled with the people and saw that there was virtually no difference between them, that they were just same people divided by a boundary wall. So also, viewers, there is right now a peace initiative going on between the two countries, with Pakistan's leading media house, the Jung Group of publications, with in partnership with Times of India, and the program is known as Aman Ki Asha. So it's a quite of a a display of friendship, and it intends to bring the people together. In fact, it is the using the power of media to change the narrative. In fact, the narrative cannot be changed because it is so long, and it is virtually impossible to do anything about it. But the fact remains that the power of media, it is so tremendous, it is so incredible, and it leaves its impact in ways that virtually cannot be imagined. So that is the magic bullet kind of impact that media leaves. It's like a magic bullet. It goes through your mind, but it doesn't harms you, or it doesn't do any danger to you. It leaves no injury, but still it goes through your mind because it's the magic bullet, and it completely changes you. It brings about a revolutionary change within your thinking. So that magic bullet kind of theory, it is being worked upon by Times of India and the young publications to really change the way people view each other. And of course, it is going to bring a revolutionary change, and it would definitely bring the two people together. Viewers, a quick break. We'll be just right back. Welcome, viewers. Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, she is currently attending the Munich Security Conference, and she held a meeting with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and she urged her to invest in fact, take advantage of the 100 economic zones set up by Bangladesh. Viewers, why Bangladesh had to do that? Because the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, she wanted to speed up industrialization and really kickstart the economy, and that was the reason why those special 100 economic zones were set up, and they are giving a boost to the economy, and giving added morale to the entrepreneurs inside Bangladesh. Viewers, the Bengali premier, she was very categorical in reminding the German chancellor that she and her economy and her industrialists and businessmen, they can take advantage of the extraordinary opportunity that lies right in front of them, and they can come and they can invest inside Bangladesh. So viewers, also there was another conference that the Bengali premier attended on, and that was on climate security, good cop and bad cop. So overall, a very busy and a very productive visit by the Bengali premier. Viewers, also given the fact that Bangladesh economy, it is emerging like never before, given the fact that renewed vigor has been thrown in by the current administration, and as these special economic zones suggest, a special focus is being placed on renewing the economy. And recently, a number of Indian businessmen, industrialists, and entrepreneurs, they have been, seeing Bangladesh as the ideal destination for their business, given the way they are facilitated, and certain regulations, they are being slashed in order to facilitate them and give economy and business a chance to grow. Viewers, also before I conclude my today's show, I have I would cast myself in the role of a kind of a career coach, not a career coach, but like a motivational speaker. News from the Indian skipper Virat Kohli is that recently he attended a conference somewhere in India, and he had words of he was trying to motivate the youth, the Indian youth, and he stated that very very clearly that love your dreams and live your dreams, and work hard, and spend the rest of your life chasing your dreams, and you will never regret, you will never have any regrets at all. Viewers, the Indian skipper, recently he was applauded by the current Indian coach, Anil Kumble, who had taken almost 600 test wickets, and Anil Kumble stated that in his assessment, Virat Kohli is a very kind of a like a focused individual and like a single-minded individual. If he sets his mind to something, he really achieves. He really grabs that goal, and he stated that he was able to personally witness his entire transformation, the way he worked his way up from the from a small team at a regional level, and then he was able to make it to the under 19 national team and won the international World Cup, and then he was able to make his entry, so to speak, in the Indian national cricket team, and the way he has stood up as a figure to be emulated. It is a lesson in motivation for all. So viewers, love your dreams and live your dreams. This is Janiser Ahmed from Millennium TV USA. Please visit us at www.millenniumtv.org, and if you have anything to say, we are constantly waiting for you, for your feedback. Please do drop us a line at info@millenniumtv.org. Goodbye. This is Janiser Ahmed from Millennium TV. I bid you goodbye until the next show. Bye.